Hello and welcome to Digital Coffee. This is episode 2, Way of the Future. Hey guys, I'm your host, Adrian Kogirin, and this is episode 2 of the podcast after the pilot episode, and I'm actually reshooting this episode due to some technical difficulties. I shot this yesterday morning, which would technically be Monday for me here in Japan, but due to all sorts of issues with Audacity, I ended up having to re-record the whole episode again here. So, excuse me for having it be a little bit late. Actually, it should be on time for you guys in the States because technically I'm a day ahead. So when I upload this, it should be Monday for you guys, and the news should still be all that relevant. All right. Anyways, let's jump right into the stories for the previous week. You know, everything that mattered that went on in the technology world essentially, and a lot of it dealt with Facebook, and that's the first story I want to talk about. Last week, there's a lot of Facebook news from all sorts of stuff that came out, but most importantly, their Q2 results came out, talking a lot about their mobile sales, their audience numbers, their figures, all that good stuff, all of which were outstanding. You know, everything was up, and their earnings exceeded they exceeded expectations, and all of which were record-breaking. Now, the bigger news that comes out of that, with Facebook's Q2 stats being up, so was their stock. The stock price went up. A lot of, there's a big up in the market. And for 30-year-old Mark Zuckerberg, that meant making over $1.6 billion with a B over the course of the article. It's funny because all the articles say summer, but technically he made it all in one day, adding $1.6 billion to his fortune, making him now, I believe, the 16th richest in the world, if I'm not mistaken. He surpassed a couple of people on the list, the two of those being the Google founders and one being Jeff Bezos of Amazon, to rising his overall net worth to $33 billion overall, which is, quite ridiculous at the age of 30. And to put things into perspective, 33.3 billion. There's a big, difference in 33 and 33.3 when it comes to those figures. But again, like I said, number 16 overall ranking. His Q2 stats were amazing for Facebook, and it showed a huge increase in their mobile users, a huge increase in their revenues from ad sales. And just again, to put things into perspective, if Facebook stock was to hit $200 price per share, his fortune would grow to over, into the upper 70 plus billions. He would essentially become the richest person on earth, toppling Bill Gates and Carlos Slim for the richest billionaires in the world, or richest overall in the world, if Facebook's price was to hit 200. Again, that's a big if. It's only sitting at 70s, give or take 70, low 70s, mid 70s right now. And for it to jump that high would take some time, but it's not entirely, impossible, and anything's possible in this situation. And again, to put into the fact that he's only 30 years old, he founded a social network where, if you put into comparison, Gates founded Windows and, Microsoft and everything that Facebook essentially runs off of in terms of the PC platform, while Zuckerberg has built a social network this day and age and is, literally gunning for the top 10 spot in terms of the world's wealthiest. And, Zuckerberg, if anything, is one of the more, modest billionaires, if that's even a phrase. He lives very modestly, and not to say he doesn't have nice things, but for a billionaire, his lifestyle is very, he's been akin to money for quite a while now since he started Facebook, and he hasn't really, been living a ridiculous lifestyle since his fortunes. But nonetheless, $1.6 billion in a day, that's something else entirely. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about a Kickstarter project that's rather interesting. It's a little bit about design, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on the AC here. Hopefully that doesn't kick in too loud on the microphone. The Verge wrote an article entitled "The Bible's Mess," the Bible's a mess, but a designer is fixing it. Now, I'm a little biased in two ways in this article. First off, I'm not religious. Second off, I don't read physical books. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, so when you talk to me about book design, I'm not well versed in that, but I do understand the idea here. And if you watch the Kickstarter video, regardless, putting all of that aside, it is a very, very interesting Kickstarter. Essentially, it goes in to talk about the importance of book design, as far as spacing, the lettering, the typeface, the numbers and the way that, for example, in the Bible, there's many verses and chapters and so on and so forth, and how those are labeled, and the spine of the book, and how that affects the book. Everything that deals with the physical aspect of the book and how that correlates the story in itself. Now, he's taking that a step further by going with a book that's very, very old and it's been around and is very, revered and known, and that is the Bible. So basically, he's going to be taking the Kickstarter is called Biblioteca. I don't know if it's meant to be. I know Biblioteca is Spanish, or library in Spanish, but it's spelled differently. So I don't know the meaning behind this. But anyways, it's taking the biblical literature that is the Bible, designed and crafted for reading, and separating it into 4 elegant volumes and freeing it of all numbers, notes, etc. So he's going, minimalistic. He's simplifying it, but at the same time making it much more, I guess in his case, or in the case of the reader, visually appealing. Now, the original goal was 37K. The long shot goal was 1 million, and it's to date raised $1.4 million, $1,444,345 to be exact, with over 14,884 backers. And 0 seconds to go on the campaign. So, if you were able to do that, you pledge money, you're able to get prints, limited edition prints, artwork, all that good stuff, and then advanced copies once this comes out. Again, you can read it all. He talks a lot about the design and production, what he plans on doing with the typefaces and the differences and the budget and the quality of the book, and how the cost breakdown is going to go into distribution, and printing services and binding and all this, crazy stuff here. So, if you're interested in that, even if you aren't a fan of the Bible, whatever it may be, it's an interesting Kickstarter. It's taking something old, and I like how The Verge put it. They said making the good book better, and essentially he's going to be taking a book that's obviously, again, very well known and adding a whole new design spin. And whether or not there's going to be a lot of controversy around that, who knows? But nonetheless, from a design perspective, it is a pretty interesting Kickstarter, and you guys can check out that link down below. All right, moving on to the next story. Let's talk about prototype pods here. These are from an article on CNN. Now, these are some interesting cars and a look at the future of urban transit. And these really, really futuristic, almost alien-looking like cars that are these like little single pods that essentially would drive you from where you need to go. And the article goes on and talks kind of about the ideal future of technology. Now, granted, self-driving cars aren't new technology. They've been developed for a while. Obviously, Google has been a big player in that field, and they have some pretty successful cars, and there's a lot of legalities behind all that stuff. Like, I know with the Google cars of right now, I think in California alone, if it's a self-driving car, you need to have a physical person behind the wheel. You can't be like just a passenger or something. You have to be able to manually override the car in the event that whatever, the software messes up, something happens. You need to be able to manually control the car and be behind the wheel. Now, they lay out a really cool image and an idea of this urban transit and how these cars would work and how these would be around the world. And it's an interesting perspective, and it's something that I think definitely will happen down the road, probably not in the next, 5 years, or maybe even not in the next 10 years, who knows? Because again, there's going to be a lot of legalities. There's going to be a lot of adaptation, because you're going to have a mix of public transit, and you're going to have a mix of these self-driving cars, essentially. But the idea being, you can step out in a new city, whether you're visiting New York or you're coming from somewhere. You step out, you pull out your phone, you open up some app that, rather than calling an Uber or a taxi, you would hit this button and some self-automated driving car would just show up to your destination based off of GPS location. And from there, it would take you to wherever you want to go. And again, you literally do nothing. The human interaction element is cut out of it. Now that has both its pros and cons to it, but essentially you would be able to just do all of that with your phone, your mobile device, and have all of that, maybe have it set schedule pickup and all that crazy stuff. But that's the idea of it. And then they go on to kind of talk about this, and they showcase some of these cars here and some concepts of these car pods parked outside a destination waiting for riders essentially to use it. So it would be much like a taxi stand nowadays, where you walk out and you see taxis available. You would have these self-driving cars that are ready to take you wherever you need to go. Again, it's definitely, to kind of quote the aviator, way of the future status. It is something that we'll be seeing, and again, there is very, very great implementations of this now, like I said, with the Google cars and stuff like that. Not to say they're pretty and they have their bugs. They're very, rough sketch type things right now, and in cars that do work, but still have, wrinkles to iron out, essentially. So definitely something to look forward to. I mean, it's been around for a while, these kind of prototype cars, these self-driving cars. But that leads me for me to transition into the next story, talking about the future and technology and all that good stuff. And that is an article written up over at ZDNet talking about, could food waste power our cities? Now, this in itself is just like that whole self-driving car concept. This is nothing new. This idea of a biogas system, or what's the proper term for it here? Anaerobic digestion, and that's the technology essentially that takes it's a microbial process that's been around really since the beginning of time. Basically, it's decomposition. It's taking old things and then having that decompose, but in this case, having that form energy. So the way that this would work, basically, these biogas plants take old food from landfills or whatever, recycled food that we normally would just throw away, and there's tons of that in the world, and having that chemically altered, or taken to a plant and harvesting plant where it creates biogas and provides energy for us to use and recycle, essentially. So this is, again, like I said, the idea of this decomposition is nothing new, but now we're actually building plants and factories for this to actually harvest and process all this food that we waste essentially per year, and use it to power facilities, factories, so on and so forth. The article goes into show some cases where, like, such as, I think there's one in, I want to say, is it Sacramento they showcase here? That they have one where they're getting food from places like the Kroger, the grocery stores. They're getting food from the University of California, or they're powering the University of California, I should say, sorry, with the food that they're getting from these places that are recycling food. Places like Ralph's, their spoiled foods, and other food stores are essentially donating their foods to these sort of plants that can recycle the energy to generate enough to power a whole building or facility. Again, this is nothing new, but the idea of having these in major cities, in this case I had one in Sacramento, and having these more worldwide and more widely available, rather than wasting all of this food and putting it into a landfill, or having these stores who throw out food that gets spoiled or that they can't serve the next day, you would essentially be creating energy with it, and rather than just having it decompose in some garbage fill or landfill, you can use it and harness it for energy. So in the essence, it's literally another man's trash is another man's energy in this case. And it's a really cool concept. You can read the full, all the scientific facts and stuff like that and technicalities of it in the ZDNet article. Really, really, really great article, but definitely something to check out, and obviously look for in your city if you have one of these. It's a very useful thing, and they've very 21st century kind of alternative energy sort of status type thing. So that all being said, let's go into the next article, and this is all about the lawsuit ongoing right now. So not all the details are out about this right now, but the Bose lawsuit, who's recently just decided to sue Beats, the manufacturer of the famous headphones, the Dr. Dre headlines, and which was recently purchased by Apple. Just yesterday it was approved by the EU. I think it still needs to be approved by the US, but the acquisition of the Beats headphone lineup by Apple means they will now have to be picking a fight with Bose, who is suing them over noise-canceling headphones. So Bose, obviously very famous for their sound system and very famous for their noise-canceling headphones like the QC15, which I have a pair of, and they have multiple lines of QC. That stands for Quiet Comfort. They make really, really great noise-canceling technology. It works really, really well, and I'll test to that, again, with the pair of headphones that I own from Bose. But apparently they're saying that Beats has infringed on over 50 years of research, development, and engineering of noise-canceling technology through the current lineup of, it says here, 36 U.S. patents and applications, which breaks down into 22 granted patents and 14 applications that are currently under review. It says that Bose has used these, including in their lines like the studio lineup and the new wireless Bluetooth headphones that Bose has recently released. So if this falls through, as with any lawsuit, I mean, it's not something where they could recall the product, obviously. There's tons of Beats headphones out there. It's just going to be something that it's, literally going to cost a lot of money depending on who wins the settlement, whether or not they did infringe or they didn't infringe. This is one for, obviously the lawyers and the court. It's going to be a lot of he said, she said type stuff. And, obviously, nothing is confirmed. Nothing is confirmed whether or not Beats did infringe on these patents and they were using Bose's technology in their headphones. Regarding specific patents, Usually this ends in a settlement, like I said, in terms of somebody's going to pay somebody a big amount. And if anything, at least since Apple picked up Beats, Apple is one of those companies that is the wealthiest currently right now, not just in the technology sector, but overall. So they have the money to fork over if need be. But again, I'm sure, not to say they would want to or whatever it may be, but nonetheless, it is going to be a pretty big settlement, or pretty big news, and just happens to be the time right after Apple picked up Beats, so they're going to get into some legal trouble as soon as they acquire the company here, which isn't the best of situations. But overall, like I said, they're seeking for an injunction right now against the continued infringement and a full account of the sales on the infringing devices, damages including court costs, determination from the infringement, and all this crazy mumbo jumbo, which in the end will just end up to $1 amount demanding to be paid from either team, or if there's going to be any countersuits or anything of that nature, we'll have to see. So again, definitely a story to follow over probably the next 2 weeks. You'll be hearing a lot about it, especially since the EU clearing of the Apple Beats deal has just gone down. And to be honest, we haven't even really heard about anything why Apple, aside from Apple buying Beats for their name brand and their association with media and current population or pop culture. There's also obviously Beats' streaming service, which we may see Apple integrate. We're not too sure what they'll do with the actual hardware of the headphones, if they're going to choose to integrate those in the future with their own hardware. But right now, I'm sure all they have to worry about is the current legality issues that are ongoing. All right, so last but not least, it is another Apple story, but this was just recently confirmed. Actually, it's not the last story. Sorry, I thought this was the last story. I need to scroll down to read. It's the last Apple story. Apple confirms the purchase of the book recommendation maker Booklamp. This was a story that broke out over the weekend. TechCrunch broke it, if I'm not mistaken. Essentially, there was an acquisition from Apple buying a company by the name of Booklamp. Now, companies like Apple, Google, etc. acquire companies all the time, big, small, medium-sized, for tons of money. And essentially, two things either happen when you see a company acquire something. Is usually, one, you'll see that company in some capacity get integrated into the daily services or products of the company who bought them, in this case Apple, or two, you'll just kind of see the company fall into the ether and never hear of it again type thing. But Apple has bought a company by the name of Booklamp. Booklamp was a book recommendation maker, which essentially would look at purchases and books that you've bought and recommend more off of that. And it was a really popular engine. It was a really popular site. And again, Apple has just bought them out. And if you head over to Booklamp's site right now, it's currently down. There's a farewell page. Apparently, this is a move that people are speculating for Apple to go head-on-head with Amazon in the ebook market, Amazon being the leader in the ebook market, specifically with their Kindle service and the recently unleashed Kindle Unlimited to really kind of stamp their brand on the ebook market. Apple, of course, offers iBooks. They offer books in their App Store and iTunes Store. And with the purchase of Booklamp, I'm guessing this would just, integrate that core technology into something like the App Store or whatever it may be. Because if you think of it, Apple already has everybody's iTunes user IDs and things of that nature. So if they could see what you've been purchasing and books that you're interested in, and it can use this Booklamp service to recommend more, then that just only drives sales and increase sales. Because obviously, you're more inclined to buy something that is relevant to what you're reading currently or have read. So that's the idea behind services or recommendation services. So again, right now the number isn't final, but apparently it's in the $10 to $15 million range that Apple has bought out Booklamp for. So again, we're going to have to see how this plays out. We're going to see what this means for the ebook market essentially versus Apple versus Amazon and all that good stuff. And with that, there's a jet flying over right now, hopefully. Nope. Sorry. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I'm going to have to edit that background noise out. But with that, let's go into the last story of the day, and that is all about Zappos. Zappos is the famous shoe company, known for a couple things. Obviously known for their quality of service and all of that, and their shoes and marketplace. But really, really, again, that customer service is what sticks out when it comes to Zappos. They're known for, there's a whole book written by the CEO, Tony Hsieh, about Zappos and the philosophy behind all of it. And they've just released something I think is really forward-thinking in the space of social media and all that, and it's called AskZappos. Essentially, it is a personal assistant for you to access via this application, and you can do it in multiple ways. If you're looking for a pair of shoes, essentially, you can ask Zappos. They will find it for free from any store. So the idea being, let's say you're watching a TV show, you see an ad, or you're walking on the street, you see a pair of shoes that you like, you see a pattern, you see a type, and you take a picture of it. You can do multiple things. You can text a photo to a number. You can email it to ask@zappos.com. You can post it on Instagram with a hashtag AskZappos. Or last but not least, you can head over to the site and just upload the photo there. From there, it takes you and it sends it out to a personal assistant on the end of AskZappos or the Zappos team, and they will go out to find that exact shoe or as close as they can to it. Either in their store or in another store. If it's not even in their store, they'll still find it for you and offer it to you. So again, it's all free. They find it for free. They will look for it and they will provide you with a link or wherever the closest they have found and get back to you, which is a really, really, amazing in itself. Now, I don't know the full details of this. I don't know if Zappos is getting paid on commission from the other shoe sources that they look at and so on and so forth. Like if it's not in the Zappos store, if they recommend it from other stores, if they're getting some sort of commission based off of that. But regardless, like this is really, it's not a paid service. It's completely free and it's very, very interesting in a sense. See, if you want something nowadays, you can literally take a picture of it and have somebody find it for you. It's a part of this whole new e-commerce thing and informing of social media. There's apps like Fancy and other apps like that where basically are like Instagram, where you can post pictures of things and post links to buy them, so people can literally buy what they see in their feed. I think this is another use case example of that. It's another example of a company really thinking on their feet and thinking of the modern market and how people use social media and Instagram and how they can get involved. And essentially with this Ask Zappos campaign, they can get a shoe that they want from where, and they don't have to do the research. That you simply snap a picture, send it over, and let Zappos do the rest. I think that's the epitome of customer service in itself. Again, we're gonna have to see how this plays out. It's not, prominent if it's gonna be a thing that sticks around. I'm guessing it will, and I don't know the financials behind it and how it's gonna be run, but nonetheless, I like the idea. I like the concept, and you can head over to askzappos.apps.zappos.com right now to try it out and test it for yourself. All right, so that concludes the podcast for today, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed as usual, and hopefully I won't have any issues with Audacity this time around when it comes to editing it and saving the podcast if I do it properly enough. I'm still shooting all this on Audacity, by the way, so I literally record it, edit it, and export it all via Audacity. I plan on moving to another audio editor in the future if need be, but as of right now, Audacity works perfectly fine. So, all that said, I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Of course, for all the show notes and article links to both the source articles and our own articles that we wrote with our opinions on top of it, you guys can check out the show notes in the description down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, obviously, if you're on the website, then the show note links should be down below. Stay up to date with all our information, digitaldojos.com, twitter.com/digitaldojos. And guys, I'm going to sign out for today. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you all next week.